Hello there, my name is Louise Jupp, Women and Drones Africa. Welcome to a series of Zoom chats with trailblazing women in the African drone industry. In this series, I'm chatting to women about the roles that they're playing in the African drone industry, how they started, why they started, some of the challenges they may have faced, as well as some of the opportunities that they see for girls and women in particular in the future. I'm also asking their advice for someone who might be looking at the industry, not sure what to or where to start or how to start. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Sonet Kock from South Africa. Hello, Sonet.
Hi, good morning, Louise. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Congratulations on starting the African chapter for Women and Drones. And yeah, I'm looking forward to being involved with it and getting to know more of our colleagues in Africa.
Great, no, thank you. Yes, it's been good fun doing this series, I must say. I've really enjoyed chatting to everybody and all the unique stories and reasons why and challenges, etc. It's been good fun. But yeah, thank you for your support.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Cool. Well, as you know, I've got a bunch of questions for you. So I'll start with the first, maybe the worst, I'm not sure. But who are you and what do you do?
Louise, I have a legal background and I've been specializing as a legal advisor in the aviation and ship industries predominantly. Within aviation, I also specialize in quality assurance and flight safety management. And I've been acting as a consultant to industry in liaising with the regulator, being the Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa. More recently, my focus shifted to drone regulations and compliance, as well as assisting organizations with enterprise drone adoption and also getting involved with advocating changes to our current regulatory framework in line with international developments.
Gosh, okay, that one must be interesting. I think we should come back to that one just now. Yeah,
we can.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the aviation industry. You know, you say you're a lawyer, but as well. But what attracted you to the aviation industry and then the drone industry? Why?
With the legal compliance background, I started in the aviation industry, I think in 2006, 2007, assisting an air operator certification. So that's sort of where my consulting started. And then I think it was in 2013, I saw my first static display of a drone at a mine survey conference. I think it happened to be the EB. And I started thinking how it could possibly disrupt the survey and mapping processes specifically used at that time, especially if the drone could really do everything the salesperson said it could do. That led me to do some research on drones just on the internet, looking at different drones and its use cases. And I was surprised to discover a myriad of different ways in which drones were being used and also, you know, the number of industries it was affecting. So that's really what got my interest pinned at that stage. And then in 2014, I started a consulting firm, AviComply, to offer specialized compliance services to would-be drone operators and companies wishing to adopt drone technology. I think at that stage, the hype was really high. We had mining companies looking to getting all of the technology, construction firms, basically all your major industries were interested in getting into drones. I think later that year, I was part of the regulatory work group that drafted the Part 101 regulations, which then came into effect in June 2015. And, you know, so at that stage, AviComply was sort of in a position then to offer legal advisory services. And I still offer those services today, amongst other things.
Okay. I'm curious, you say, you know, you first saw a static display in 2013 and then equally, you know, doing your research. I'm just curious, you know, what you saw then and what you see now, has everything lived up to the hype? Has reality struck or do you think, you know, I'm curious what you saw then and what you see today?
Well, back then, like I said, I think the static display was a UX5 and an EB. And at first I looked at it like, no, this will never disrupt the survey industry. And it's when I started doing the research, my eyes opened up very quickly, and I was like, no, this is going to be a huge disruption, not only to the mining, but agriculture, conservation, public safety, all the different use cases that there are for drones. And yes, very much what that salesperson said on that day that EB would be able to do, it's been doing very successfully till today, especially if we look at survey and mapping. It has transformed and disrupted that industry quite spectacularly. So yes, big changes were promised. I think the technology lived up to what it promised, obviously hampered by regulations in a big way. But yes, in terms of the technology and the promise of the data it could deliver, that all came true.
Okay, well, that's good to hear, because sometimes you do hear stories of over-promising and under-delivering. And it's easy to get caught out by the hype sometimes.
Yes, no, I agree with the hype. The hype, unfortunately, is there. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that also a little bit later in our conversation.
Yes. So what now keeps you in the industry?
Well, it's a challenging environment. I think one that is constantly changing and evolving, but one I feel that suits my unique skill set perfectly. So it's satisfying to me from a professional perspective, and continued development. I think at industry level, we're currently researching the categorization model for drone regulation as published by EASA and JARIS. And that is effectively, we're trying to create a set of regulations that will cover private use by hobbyists with drones weighing 250 grams or less, to dealing with urban air mobility and flying taxi drones. So it's a very exciting time to be involved in the drone industry. More so if I feel from my point of view, if you're involved in policy and regulatory drafting, there's a lot of scope and there's a lot of development that needs to take place. But also, it's technologically advanced. With these type of challenges, we're forced to think outside the box to come up with solutions that address our current challenges, but that are also future-proof. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in this cycle every 2 years, because I think it's safe to say that the technology advances a lot faster than the red tape and the bureaucracy can, and that's just a fact of life, unfortunately.
Yes, it's like you need a software upgrade every 2 years, isn't it? to get everything in line.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's ever changing. Yes, so it's the challenges of coming up with those solutions, and that combined with the technology or 5G or 4IR, it's very exciting when you put all of those together to try and come up with suitable solutions. I think we've had a lot of discussions around this, especially in South Africa, where we have our socioeconomic issues that we need to deal with. And we're not, most people feel we're not really harvesting the possibilities and advantages that drones could bring to our society. And that's really the challenge for us. But for me, it's always balancing technological advancement with your socioeconomic needs, but also then obviously maintaining you from aviation. You'll understand there's always that maintaining safety and security of the skies. So it's quite a tricky one, but an interesting one for me personally.
Yeah, it's quite a juggling match, because as you can get caught in the hype. You're desperately excited. You can see the potential, and then something stops it. It could be the regulations, or it could be something else. And you've got a lot of passionate people out there all trying to do something, and it must get quite difficult to juggle. but it must be very satisfying, though, being part of the, helping to design the framework for their use. I quite envy that.
Well, I always implore everyone, if you can get involved in any way, please do so. We've got a number of industry bodies in South Africa, on a what's the word? On your own accord.
Okay.
Not paid for. Sorry, what's that word? Any case, so there's a lot of places for people to get involved. And to get information that they need. We're sitting now currently, like I said, we're looking at the categorization model, and we're engaging stakeholders in South Africa. And when you sit down and you identify the stakeholders that need to be included going forward to get a suitable solution in play, it's not only the Civil Aviation Authority and ATNS, and NICASA. Those are the usual suspects. But, we've been engaging with the telecommunications department because we need remote ID for drones, for instance. We've been engaging with the Department of Trade and Industry because we need import and export controls to be adapted to promote the drone industry that we want to see. The South African Police Services, the security cluster. So really, it's so disruptive on so many fronts. And if we just focus on the aviation industry itself, we're already sitting next year, we'll probably start work groups for advanced air mobility or the urban air mobility. That's a big thing, because eventually we would like to get to a point where, 2025, 2027, we're looking at, in America, I think with Uber, that they'll have their first automated or autonomous drone taxis flying. So that's a very short span of time. Before we get that, we obviously want to see delivery with drone. I'm not a big fan of delivering pizzas and stuff. I think there are far more important things that need to be taken care of. Yep. Your humanitarian needs need to be fulfilled, your public safety, your emergency response. So there's also then UTM, which is another sort of work group that is going, and luckily we've officially started that discussion with that webinar that was held, I think, about a month ago. We need to look within aviation, we need to look at drone ports or sky ports or vertiports. So we're really looking at, just from a regulatory aspect, how that is going to be disrupted and affected. We're looking at your AMOs, so obviously as your drones become bigger and better and more advanced, so you'll need the skills of a maintenance technician. So there's a lot of things happening at the moment. Sometimes it happens a little bit too much behind the scenes. People might think that not much is happening, but if you do get involved in these industry bodies and the online discussions, which I suppose is one advantage of the pandemic we find ourselves in, it's opened up accessibility to these type of discussions, which previously might not have been open to you because you'd need to travel or whatever. So yes, so I always implore people, please get involved, and if you're part of the industry, it's your industry, so we need everyone's input to get this thing to move forward to, I call it our Dronetopia, the place we want to get to within the drone industry.
Okay. I mean, just listening to you there, I mean, that really highlights just how broad the drone industry is. All those different levels at which you're discussing and how we need to just, to integrate drones into society and the different disciplines it's requiring. And I mean, it's kind of jumping ahead, but that's something that for people that are looking at this industry, you don't have to just be a pilot. You don't just have to design software. There are so many different levels in which you can engage in designing or creating the frameworks, for example, to operate. I mean, it's just amazing. As you were talking, I think, gosh, how do you keep control of all of this input and feedback? I mean, it's such a convoluted but groundbreaking sort of situation to be in.
Yeah, no, very much. I think it's disruptive across all industries. It almost goes far as to say that almost every industry will probably feel some degree of disruption, which I think is in line with the disruption caused by the 4IR, artificial intelligence. It's, it's sort of in the same realm. So, yeah, I think best is to sort of try and identify disruption, whether it's already happening in your industry or not, or trying to foresee that and then, working around that. And don't be scared of it because it's coming. Deal with it and upskill yourself and prepare for it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an exciting industry. There's no doubt about it in my opinion. But yeah. Is there anybody that has particularly inspired you in the drone industry or perhaps even the aviation industry?
So there's a lot of people I could think about, but for me, it's not so much a person as an event. I attended in February this year, which was the African Drone Forum, which took place in Kigali, Rwanda. So Rwanda itself is it's like the Wakanda of Africa. It's really in awe of what they're doing in terms of technology. So, at this event, it was a conference more or less focusing on the humanitarian drones for good sort of track. And it was discussions about food airdrops and deliveries by drones, particularly last mile delivery in inaccessible areas. And once again, my eyes went open. I was like, this is happening in Africa today as we speak. And it's not people talking about doing it, they're physically doing it. So we're having food drops, last mile delivery with drones in remote areas within Africa and more or less in the poorest regions of Africa. There was a big discussion on the African agricultural sector, progressively trying to transform it into a high-tech industry. And as you know, in Africa, we've got the smallholder sort of system. So most farms are subsistence farmers. They're not making ends meet. So that's really the challenge. We don't necessarily in Africa have huge farms. I mean, you come from the agricultural background, you know what I'm talking about. But through the use of drones and innovations on these subsistence farmers, to assist them with crop diagnostics and pest control, fertilization, spraying, all of those things. And then I think the other use case that blew my mind away was the eradication of malaria. I think malaria in Africa is one of the biggest killers, something like 500,000 deaths a year. And what shocked me was to learn that it was about 60% of these deaths were in children under the age of 5. So that's just really tragic. So that was something else that was showcased. You had a discussion about it. People could show you facts and figures about what they're doing and how it's working. And I think a couple of other highlights, and actually went through some of the presentations from that in preparation for this chat. I think Sierra Leone, we always hear all these bad things about Africa. If you hear the word Sierra Leone and DRC Congo, I think it always conjures up images of blood diamonds and militants and stuff. But I mean, Sierra Leone, they've created a dedicated drone corridor for the use and testing of UAVs. It's open to industry, universities, any other agencies, and they would specifically wanted to focus on healthcare delivery, crisis response, and connectivity in their country. So connectivity, as you know, for us in Africa is a big problem, lack of infrastructure. So that's a really big use case. I think that will come forward in Africa. I think in the Congo, I learned about they were already doing delivery also of vaccines and life-saving commodities with drones. And then also, a very big part of that was the World Food Programme and their plans with cargo UAVs within Africa. Assisting poor countries with that. So yeah, okay. All in all, I was quite in awe of everything that I saw and learned at the Drone Forum, and the people that you met. And those were, some of them were European, but there were also a lot of Africans really doing amazing things with drones.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely on my list to go and attend. So it's fantastic to hear your feedback there. It's I've been keeping an eye on it for the last couple of years, and I'll get there. But that's I can see why you would be inspired. Yeah, inspired by that. Gosh.
Yeah. No, we luckily snuck that in just before COVID. So that was really luck. But it was well worth it. Very inspiring, especially if you're interested in the humanitarian and social entrepreneur sort of approach to drones.
Yes. No, I met one of the chaps that organises that challenge. Flying across. Is it Lake? It was Lake Victoria
Kivu.
When they started. Now it's Lake Kivu. Yeah, and sort of setting that challenge, and I thought that was rather fun listening to that. But the thing that caught my attention this year was drone harmonisation and drone regulation harmonisation, and I thought that was it's so important to have that sort of discussion, because that's critical for ease of use.
The harmonization across Africa, that's sort of in line with internationally, obviously EASA. That was one of the big things with their categorization model, was harmonization across European states. And you'll be happy to know that it is actually something that's on the agenda at the African Union.
Great.
So, and it's also something that as an industry body we'll be pushing because cross-border operations is a reality. I think also ICAO, although ICAO is not in the habit of creating manuals and things like that, they have actually also published a set of draft regulations based on the categorization model published by JARIS. And they actually also presented that at the African Drone Forum. And that's to assist countries also with, not haphazardly coming up with sets of regulations that can't speak to each other. So I suspect, so obviously as an industry body, we're pushing categorization framework or regulatory framework. And my suspicion is that a lot of other African countries, whether they be guided by the ICAO draft regulations or the JARIS or the EASA publications, they would probably adopt a very similar set of regulations across Africa. But the harmonization is definitely high on the agenda.
Excellent. No, that's good to hear. That makes life so much easier. At the moment, what sort of roles do you see women are already playing in this industry?
I think women are well represented within the piloting and pilot training area. I think we've got very competent and qualified and experienced remote pilots. Got a number of drone instructors at the different drone schools, and then we also have a couple, I think I know about 2 or 3 drone flight examiners, which is obviously the highest level of drone instruction you can go. I was thinking this morning, I'm not sure whether any of the drone training schools are female owned and or operated. So that was sort of one thing I could identify. Then we have a number of commercial ROC holders. Obviously in South Africa, we've got a slightly different regulatory framework to other countries. If you want to operate drones commercially, you sort of need the equivalent of an air operator certificate. And within these organizations, I find women are quite often responsible for the quality assurance and the aviation safety roles within that organization, although there are also a few women fulfilling the flight operations management roles as well. I think once again, I'm not sure how many ROC organizations are women-owned, so that's something we can work on. I know there's a couple of them that are women-managed, but the ownership, I'm not 100% sure of that. Then from the regulator side, we have a number of female airworthiness and flight operation inspectors, which for me is important because these are people that are enforcing and implementing and pushing the regulations in a certain way. And quite often they also, although they're inspectors, they can assist and, you know, sort of push people in the right direction. I think we would like to see women from other government departments getting involved in order to promote the drone industry as a whole. Obviously, as I said, drones are disruptive across, not only across industries, but what we've learned is it's also disruptive across government departments. So we can't only focus on Civil Aviation Authority. As I said previously, we need to bring in all those other stakeholders. Then I think the enterprise drone adoption, you know, so adopting drone technology into any other company or organization is another area where I've noticed more women showing interest and getting involved. For instance, within the mining industry, there's a number of female mine surveyors and mine engineers that I know of that have included drones for their survey and mapping requirements. And then I also find the drone, the insurance industry is pretty well represented. Yeah, so those are the sort of areas I could identify.
All right. Okay. No, that's a very positive picture. Actually, you know that already there's a good representation. I mean, you've kind of sort of hinted at it already, and we did discuss it just now. We were sort of saying about the big picture of all of this, but you know, where would you see the opportunities for women or girls now? If there's, you know, girls at school sort of think, well, what should I do for my career? You know, what are the opportunities that you see that women can still aspire to or reach in this industry?
So I think there's a lot of scope for women to get directly or indirectly involved in the drone industry. Directly involved in terms of becoming a remote pilot or offering a commercial drone service, and indirectly involved in terms of focusing on the peripheral services. I find that organizations quite often purchase a drone and then sort of stand around and ask, well, you know, what can we do with it? So I always advise clients that the drone is there for a specific purpose, whether it be data acquisition, carrying a specialized payload, or delivering an item. So for me, you always need to start with the end goal in mind, in terms of what issue or problem it is that you're trying to solve or improve on. Then work back to the payload or sensor, which will assist with you know, reaching that goal, and that in turn will indicate which drone you should purchase to carry the payload. And I think once you've acquired the data required, quite often still you'll need a professionally qualified person to process and interpret that data and sign off on it. That's the case with, if I just quickly think of an example, obviously survey and mapping. I think in agriculture, you've got agronomists, your construction, you'll have your engineers and things. So, you know, your professional services can definitely adopt, like you said, you don't necessarily need to be able to fly the drone, but you need to understand the workflow to be able to look at the data acquired with the drone. Because within your industry, you know, you might previously have acquired the data in a different way. Now you have to deal with data acquired by drone, or with that, obviously also it caused a surge in any aerial photography, or even, like you said, I think someone spoke about satellite imagery. So yeah, it sort of awakened that whole thing. So in terms of someone trying to get into the industry, it's always pertinent to remember that you might, as a professional person, be in the construction industry or the mining industry, insurance industry. But like I said previously, deal with that disruption, prepare for it, and take it in your stride and move forward with it. I think the other peripheral services could include drone sales, insurance, training, drone software development. There's a big sort of discussion about manufacturing drones ourselves instead of buying Chinese manufactured drones or from other countries, which once again ties in with the socio-economic needs of creating employment and stimulating the local economy. And I think what I realized this morning is a specific area where I'm not noticing any female participation at this stage is the drone maintenance and repair area.
Okay.
So I stand to be corrected, but in my dealings, I haven't come across a female that is sort of specializing in that. And I think the maintenance is going to become, will obviously grow, but it's going to become very important going forward in terms of continued airworthiness of drones and accident prevention, which any safety case that you put forward to get to, eventually getting to a point where we have flying taxis, your preventative maintenance is a very big part of that. And even there, this disruption is quite literal. I was reading an article a while back comparing a RPAS maintenance technician to your aircraft maintenance engineer. And even there's a lot of similarities, but also the same number of differences, because now a drone, there's a C2 link, there's an autopilot system, there's all kinds of other things, which you don't have on a manned aircraft. Yeah, so those are sort of the areas I could. So it's difficult to tell someone, you need to follow your passion for me, because, deciding on a career is a lifelong decision. You can change within it. It's sometimes a bit difficult. But I would hate to see people becoming remote pilots for the sake of now becoming a remote pilot and, just wanting to get a part of the hype. If you want to become a remote pilot, then I think you need to make sure, do your due diligence, find out what is the industry about, what can you do with it, where can you go with it, and then get involved from that point.
Sort of combine it with a skill, like if you're a geologist or an environmental scientist or an engineer, combine it. Yeah, I mean, but there was another. I just wrote some notes down as you were speaking there. Another thing, perhaps also too, is drone control or anti-drone, if you want to call it that. The systems to protect areas from drone incursion, as well as I've met one chap. And it was accident investigations, doing the forensics after drone incidents and accidents. And I thought that was an interesting one as well. And that sort of thing is going to become more important as we get bigger drones and bigger scale of use and things like that, I suspect.
No, absolutely. Like I said, the drones aren't only disrupting industries out there, it's actually disrupting the aviation industry itself the most, I suspect. It's put a lot of pressure on the regulator to deal with hundreds of applications. It's pressure on the aviation system now in terms of airspace, UTM. It's just the whole aviation way of thinking. Is under the spotlight and pushing to adapt and to change. But change is always difficult. I think anything you can think of. I think Old Mutual is an RSC holder now. So, I mean, they've incorporated, I suppose, roof analysis or rooftop inspections, all kinds of things. If you look at the police services themselves, the way they could use drones, you spoke about accident investigations for that. And this is all with like really small drones. So when we get to the bigger drones with, it can obviously carry better payloads. There's so many possibilities I think we should have a game and someone should come up with, well, this is my job. How can I use a drone? And you'd probably be able to come up with something.
I bet we cover everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's very exciting, the opportunities, and it's still being a new industry. There are opportunities we haven't thought of yet, but they're coming, no doubt about it. I'm just curious, for you yourself, what sort of challenges have you faced, if at all, in the drone industry or the aviation industry?
Well, when I started out, I obviously had to learn a lot about drones and drone technology. The concept of C2 links was something that was foreign to me personally, and autopilot systems and GPSs and all kinds of things. So it was from a technical point of view, there was quite a bit I had to learn. So in the beginning, I researched a lot. Learned from the guys who were already in the industry, and they were always very helpful and forthcoming with information and willing to share. And then, I suppose my background in full-size aviation was valuable, especially in drafting the drone regulations and setting up the consulting firm. And I know that this is probably quite often a huge impediment to new entrants is they need to familiarize themselves with the drone side of things as well as the aviation framework, which is highly regulated. So that is I luckily didn't have that combined issue with drones and aviation. I already had the aviation background, and I found that helped a lot. But there's a lot of information available out there, but it's pretty technical. Like I said, it's not only mechanical. It's these radio links, these software. It's quite integrated with the different sort of areas playing into it.
Yes, I mean that was the fun thing with the pilot's licenses. Suddenly, there was a whole series of topics to cover for the theory. And sometimes some of it didn't quite make sense. Well, this is a drone, it's not an aircraft. But then when you get into it and you start, using this for real, you realize that there's a lot of value in understanding the bigger picture. And it's easy to discount, thinking, we're just drones. But no, you're sharing airspace with manned aviation. You need to know what's going on out there. It's like you don't learn to drive and go onto the motorway without being aware of what's going on. You've got to be trained for that. So I loved it, and I love finding out all about that. But I know it does frustrate people.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I think our remote pilot license, the RPL, was also something that culminated from the 2014 work group. We actually put a lot of effort into that, knowing full well that you'll get someone from the banking sector or whoever that now wants to become a remote pilot. And a lot of work went into that. Back then, there were a couple of guys that were interested in starting a school. Some of them carried on and did that. But I think our RPL covers everything from air law down to maintenance, flight planning. I think how many subjects are there? 12?
Six or seven. Human factors, meteorology, navigation.
Factors. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a proper pilot's license. Which is also something which is different to other countries. Some countries you only need to go and do an aeronautical knowledge exam. Other countries for lower level flights, it's basically, sort of more a SAMAR model aircraft type exercise. Come stand with an instructor and we'll just sort of make sure that you know how to fly it. I mean, our remote pilots have to undergo aviation medical examinations. Yeah. There's the airband radio, your radio telephony, which is not easy to pass for most remote pilots. So it's quite extensive, and I think it puts us in a higher class in terms of our pilot competence. So maybe something also from the African Drone Forum is, we're having a discussion about safety, and one participant stood up and said, he's got a really good idea. Why don't we give the remote pilot on the ground an airband radio so that he can communicate with air traffic, And I was like, my gosh, we've been doing that for 5 years. So it just shows to the proficiency and the level of competence that our remote pilot licenses give the pilot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and also, I mean, I'm really proud of, the pilot light, getting it. And I tell you, the one thing that was good for me was I did my radio practical in the air, flying an aircraft. It was my first time I'd flown an aircraft. The guy said, okay, well, let's go and do the radio, piled me into this aircraft. And I was flying it and trying to talk on the radio at the same time. And suddenly I got you realize just how important it was to do this training, because you've got this 3D environment you're flying in. You need to know who's out there. And it was I think everybody, personally, I think all our pilots should do the radio in the air, because then you know why you're doing all the other theory. It really opens your eyes.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, that radio is fun. It's like learning another language, and everybody goes, blah, 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 and you're going, talk slowly.
No, I believe it's not that easy to pass the exam. So everything's set at quite a high level. But you see, that's why then, a lot of people don't understand that, there's always a lot of criticism, at home, specifically about the South African drone regulatory framework that we have to suffer under. It's limiting the number of legal operators. But I always say, you need to compare apples with apples. So the type of operations we can do in South Africa is very advanced. I mean, we're talking about BV loss. I think the furthest one is 20 odd kilometers. Night operations close to airports within controlled airspace. It's advanced operations that we can do. And the moment you have your ROC and it's approved within your CONOPS and your OPSPEC, you can do that anywhere in the country. If we look at other countries, they might have a lot more operators, legal operators, but those operators are very restricted as to what they can do. And quite often a BV loss type operation in another country is sort of once off, or it's on a trial basis. It's done very cautiously. So I suppose it's the choice we made, was to go for the more advanced operations, but that now caused us to limit the number of operators we have. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we can get into if you'd like to. But the standard is very high. The standard of the remote pilot, the type of operations we can do. So, that also has to count for something.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important to have high standards. When you're flying with other aircraft and other people. I mean, there's going to be more and more drones. You need to know, you've got to have a certain standard and know what to do. So it's really important. I mean, you've been to the African Drone Forum. What's your sort of awareness about the drone scene, and for girls or women in particular in Africa?
Well, I think I'd like to share the Life Bank story from Nigeria. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, as an example of what African women can achieve. I think Nigeria has the highest rate of maternal mortality in Africa. I think it's second in the world to India. And obviously with that is also a lot of problems plaguing its health system, from poor infrastructure to a shortage of doctors, which is basically, I think, a theme across most African countries. The ladies founded Life Bank was founded by a Nigerian lady called Temi Giwa Tubuson. I'm saying that correctly. I hope I meet her one day and then say it and pronounce it correctly. And she basically launched Life Bank because she wanted a world where women in her country no longer died from preventable causes like postpartum hemorrhage. I was just looking at the website a little bit earlier. So today, Life Bank is a digital medical distribution company that facilitates products like blood, oxygen, and vaccines to hospitals, primarily with motorcycles and boats. And then more recently, Life Bank obviously also commenced drone delivery of medical supplies, especially blood to patients in emergency situations or in places that are inaccessible by motorbike or boat. She also, during COVID, also added a couple of services, which included delivery of oxygen to patients with COVID to quarantined areas. So, a whole lot of extra stuff was done during this COVID period. And then I think in 2020, Timmy received the international, she's received international recognition for her work as a health advocate in addressing specifically blood shortages in Nigeria, as well as her innovative use of technology. So it's the drones, it's the apps, all kinds of stuff, putting it all together and then coming up with a suitable solution to the issue. So I read on the website, she received the Global Citizen Prize for a Business Leader this year. And previously, she's also received a Tech Entrepreneur Award from the Africa Women Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum. She's received Africa Netpreneur Award. And then I think last year she received the Jack Ma African Business Award. So that for me is a pretty inspirational African woman in the drone industry. And all of this started with her having a very personal sort of experience where in her own country she came across a woman that was suffering from childbirth and was basically everyone in the village was just waiting for her to pass away because nothing could be done. So there's no access to medicine, there's no access to doctors, and that sort of for her was the trigger that set all of this in motion. So yeah, go and look at the website, it's pretty cool. She's also now specializing in delivering of oxygen. So, and I think she's also gone into Ethiopia. For me, what makes this different to, I suppose, next door in Ghana, Rwanda, we've got Zipline doing this, but for me, that's an American tech startup doing all of this, which for me is also great what they are doing. But for someone from Africa pushing so hard to make this change come true is truly inspirational. So I think as women, commercial on a commercial field, we can do really well, especially in Africa. I think there's nothing holding us back because we've said you don't necessarily need to be able to fly the drone yourself. You just need to do something with the data that is acquired from the drone or, like we said, the item you want to deliver. That opens up a whole lot of possibilities for any business person. So for me, there's always the two sides to drone use. It's commercial use, and then it's commercial and corporate use, and then it's the social entrepreneurship and humanitarian side. So there's really a lot of opportunity. I think Africa leans itself towards drones specifically because of the socioeconomic issues that we have across the continent. Got a really big problem with infrastructure development, which to me then drone delivery is an absolute must. We've spoken about connectivity. That's a very big thing. I know there's a couple of countries looking into that. If we can bring connectivity to the African continent, especially your outlying areas, I think the possibilities for online learning, we should start thinking about that. We'll be busy for another 3 hours. So there's really a lot of space. So whether it's from a commercial gain perspective that you want to do it, you're an entrepreneur, you're a tech startup, you're into the 5G, the 4IR, there's a lot of opportunity. If it's corporate, I think as a professional person within your corporation or your industry, you can get involved and spearhead it and move forward, but then also very much humanitarian and drones for good type of thing. There's also a lot that can be done there.
Okay. Yeah, I think the humanitarian sort of side really plays to the strengths that women have of nurturing and protecting and bringing the communities together. For me, that's my sort of feeling, and certainly talking to some others, it's that sort of wanting to help that is a big driver, I find.
It is a big driver, but I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to only that, because women are also very good business people. And I think when you start up something, eventually it leads to employing more people. You can also do business for good. So I don't think we must always just stare at the humanitarian side. I think there's some brilliant business women out there. I hope they're looking at introducing or adopting drones into their businesses so that they, take advantage of the possibilities that it could offer them to move forward in the commercial world as well.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point. Yeah. So really, I mean, again, I think you've given advice throughout our chat, but what would be a really core piece of advice you would give someone if they were sort of looking at the industry and sort of thinking, oh, I'm not sure, or didn't know how to start? What would be your core advice?
I think the best advice would probably be don't get into the drone industry for the sake of getting involved in the drone industry, due to the hype around it. I see that too often. And secondly, if you can see a valid reason or opportunity to get involved, you need to be prepared to deal with disruption in terms of technology, frustration in terms of bureaucracy and the red tape. And I think entering the drone industry, inadvertently includes entering the aviation industry, which in itself is highly regulated and rigid in terms of its ability to adapt to change, as we've mentioned. And I know this is normally one of the biggest things that frustrates the tech entrepreneurs the most. They want to come in and we need to be flexible and change and things. And it's the existing aviation industry is not like that. So yeah, then I think another bit of advice is a lot of information on the internet. I think drone software and drone data, you always look at the drones, but actually need to look at the drone data, new ways of acquiring it, new information that you can gain from it, will continue to disrupt a number of industries. And I think professionals within these industries need to upskill themselves to be in a position to take advantage of the disruption and to change, to further their careers or their businesses by taking that advantage, as we've said. Yes.
Okay. No, well, thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. I think, we're coming to the end of the questions, I think, but is there anything else that springs to mind that you would like to say on any of the subjects that we've covered today, or anything else before we sort of wrap up?
Well, I think we've touched on in terms of the drone regulations changing. There's a lot of activity in that. So maybe that's a bit of advice I can add to the last question is, if you're in the industry, you sort of need to keep up to date with what is happening and what is being planned. Obviously, as a business strategy, that's very important. So if we look at the categorization that we're trying to push from industry side, I see wonderful things happening with that. For instance, if we look at the low-level type of operations within a categorization model, it would be possible for a subsistence farmer to fly a drone legally on his own farm, get the information that you would need to do your crop investigations and pests, all the information that you can get from that. I think there's a lot of pressure, like I said, to enable owner-operators to fly drones legally, obviously within a very restrictive type of environment with limitations on the type of operations that can be undertaken, but nonetheless, we need to make it possible for young entrepreneurs to be able to do, for instance, a rooftop analysis or a wedding photography or whatever it may be. So those are the type of things we're pushing for to enable more people to enter, especially the youth. We've got a very high unemployment rate in South Africa, so we really need to do that. But then we also at the same time pushing the peripherals, as I've called it. Trying to educate people into listen, but it's not only flying the drone. There's the acquisition of data, there's the processing of data, there's the interpretation of that data, there's the software, and that all ties in with your STEM product subjects at school, trying to promote all of that. We're pushing really hard the manufacturing, locally manufactured drones, getting that going. So there's a lot of stuff happening. But the biggest one for us at the moment is just to enable more entrants without obviously sacrificing our skies. So like I said, that's the challenge, enabling more people, but maintaining safety and security in order for this whole thing to carry forward. So so it's a big challenge. We've got a couple of people in industry working on it. And then once again, anyone that wants to get involved should please do so. We need the more heads, the better.
Great. Okay. I'll give you a shout myself. But no, I agree. I mean, we need to get more people involved, but as you say, not at the expense of safety. I mean, it's taken over 100 years for aviation safety to reach the levels that it has. And, we need to maintain that principle. But no, that's great about getting more people involved one way or another. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. How can someone get hold of you if they've heard something that you've said today that's either inspiring them or they want to find out more? How can they get hold of you?
I think LinkedIn is the easiest way to get involved. Otherwise, I don't know how we can get the email address out.
I can add it to the bottom of the description.
Please, that would be great. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but LinkedIn,
Right.
I'm on LinkedIn. Try and check it every day. So I would be able to respond on that. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you once again. Really appreciate your time. It was great chatting to you. It's some really interesting, information that you had there. Definitely going to have to chat to you again to see what's happening and what's changing. Yeah. No. I hope we have a reason to chat very often, because that means things are changing, which would be great. And let's try and keep everyone up to date as to what's happening and what possibilities are. So thank you for the chat. I also enjoyed it. Cool, thank you. Okay, well, let me just say goodbye to the audience. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed meeting Sonet. Please look out for more Zoom chats with trailblazing women in the African drone industry. In the meantime, keep safe and keep well. Cheers.